The trees on Karavos 9 didn't whisper, they screamed. Not with sound, but with color, flooding the bioluminescent canopy with pulses of warning light that could be seen from orbit. Reds meant territorial predators. Yellows were for toxic pollen blooms, but the black-green flashes that surged across the forest floor in the early hours of the 34th Sol? Nobody knew what those meant, and that terrified even the native species. General Uvex of the Varl Dominion stared at the drone feed with all four of his glassy black eyes, mandibles twitching in unease. The footage showed nothing unusual, just trees the size of orbital towers swaying gently in still air, leaves glistening with moisture, dense fog clinging to gnarled roots as if afraid to rise. "Rewind 2 seconds, he rasped, the command barely a whisper through his voice modulator. The tech complied. The trees shimmered, light refracted through water-rich bark. A blur, a ripple in the fog, a human shape a battalion of them, then gone again. No weapons fired, no alarms triggered, just disappearance. "They're ghosts," muttered Uvex. No one contradicted him. What made the humans of Epsilon 17 so dangerous wasn't their strength. It wasn't even their technology primitive by Varl standards. It was their discipline, their silence. Their ability to occupy a planet and make you believe it was still uninhabited. Every wargame simulation against them failed. The Varl's predictive combat algorithms simply locked up. One strategist had likened it to playing chess with a mirror. Uvex adjusted his posture in the command cradle, antennae dipping in thought. Somewhere, deep in that sentient forest, one human battalion had landed without detection, leaving no trace, no emissions, no comms. Not even thermal signatures. And now, entire scout squads were vanishing. Across the quadrant, command centers were lighting up with the same patterns. Sector clears, silence, then sudden loss of life signs. And all of it without a single shot fired. Captain Mara Chin had once served the Terran Defense Corps as a linguist. She now served as their executioner. Her platoon crouched in the fungal undergrowth of Karavos 9, unmoving, camouflaged in suits that bonded with local spore matrices. They did not breathe indetectable oxygen patterns. Their suits converted ambient methane and photosynthesized infrared radiation. Their rifles were sealed in vacuum sheaths. They did not speak. They moved only when the forest dimmed. Silence was their native tongue. "Target tree cluster 9A, show me the nest," Mara whispered. Her voice never left her throat. Her command pulsed through the neural mesh connecting her team. She saw it through Private Duval's lens, a Varl scout nest shaped like a crystallized lung, 30 meters above ground, partially cloaked, 6 drones, 3 perimeter guards, and a data core pumping telemetry straight to Dominion HQ. "Silent kill," Mara ordered. A black dart slipped from a launch sheath. It flew like a moth, flitting from leaf to leaf, blending in with the ambient life. Then it touched the nest's membrane. Not an explosion, just a pulse and EM wipe that liquefied the core's memory. Another flicker. Guards dropped, not from pain, from neurosynaptic overload. Mara's battalion moved past the nest like a shadow. They didn't kill unless they had to. This wasn't a war of attrition, this was a war of erasure. And they were very good at it. Aboard the Dominion dreadnought Vraxis Deliverance, panic had not yet taken hold, but something worse had confusion. The kind that makes generals question their equations. That made Uvex's second-in-command, Commander Greeks, speak aloud the one thing no Varl officer was allowed to say. "They're winning," Uvex hissed. "They have no air dominance," Greeks continued. "No orbital defense. Their fleet is non-existent. And yet, we've lost 12 scout nests, 7 communication relays, and 1 planetary anchor without identifying a single hostile operative. Do you know how many wars we've fought, Commander?" Greeks blinked his compound eyes. 73. "And how many we've lost?" Greeks paused. "None." "Then stop counting battles," Uvex snapped, mandibles clicking furiously. "Count how many minds they're breaking." A silence fell. Because that was it, wasn't it? The battalion on Karavos 9 wasn't just fighting a military campaign. They were conducting a psychological war, and they were winning. In the damp soil of a galaxy's forgotten moon, one battalion had made the smartest minds in the galaxy feel something they hadn't in centuries. Doubt. And that's where fear begins. Back in the forest, Mara Chin knelt before an alien grave. It was not marked, nor even recognized as such by her companions, but she had felt it, a pulse in the earth, a decay pattern not consistent with local flora. Here, under this root, a Varl child had died weeks ago, caught in the crossfire of a Dominion skirmish before the humans even landed. She laid a charmstone beside it, one she'd carried from Earth, a shard of obsidian etched with the names of her first squad, lost to a different war, on a different world. Her memories of them were foggy. Time did that. Grief was a slow poison. You never noticed it until it had hollowed you out. "We fight the ones who start wars," she whispered, "not the ones who inherit them." Above her, the leaves flashed a mournful blue. A moment later, the sky exploded. 4 Dominion skiffs had dropped from low-orbit gunships. Fire rained down on the canopy. Explosions tore ancient trees apart like they were paper dolls. Mara's team scattered. "Jump, code white," she ordered. Each soldier triggered their mycelial slip packs devices that fused with local spore networks and fired them into the underground fungal web. They vanished from the surface, reappearing miles away in wet, writhing dark. The Dominion had found them, which meant someone had leaked. And Mara intended to find out who. Marakin emerged from the fungal conduit into silence and rot. The underground cavity was massive bioluminescent vines coated the ceiling like a second sky, pulsing dimly with the heat signatures of long-past creatures. Around her, the others flickered in one by one. Duval, Ortez, Singh, and the rest. 27 soldiers out of 30. 3 missing. The silence between them was not just tactical, it was reverent. Every disappearance left a psychic bruise. In the Terran 9th Ghost Battalion, no one was left behind. But sometimes the forest took its due. Mara's eyes narrowed. Someone had tipped off the Dominion. That skiff barrage had been too precise, too sudden. Aerial scans wouldn't have pinpointed them unless... "Scan for resonance trails," she ordered via ThoughtSpeak. Duval's interface pulsed. "Got something. Weak psionic bleed about 30 clicks west. Someone's talking to something without authorization. Alive? Not for long if I get there first." Mara didn't smile. She hadn't smiled in months, but the edges of her mouth twitched with the memory of how traitors were handled in the 9th. Above ground, the Dominion's command post stood like a metal infection in the forest's skin. High towers stabbed skyward, bristling with antennae and auto turrets. Varl soldiers moved with unsettling synchronicity, an army bred not for bravery, but for exactitude. Commander Greeks reviewed the incoming scans again. The human battalion had vanished. Again. "This isn't a war zone, it's a mausoleum with good PR," he muttered. His adjutant blinked. "Sir? Every time we engage, they melt away. They don't defend. They don't counterattack. They vanish. And the worst part? The adjutant remained still. "We're starting to feel like we're the invaders." Just then, a priority comm ping came through, from deep in the forest. An encoded Dominion beacon, level red. That meant a traitor. Greeks leaned forward. "Patch it through. Visual only." The screen hissed with interference, then stabilized, and there he was. A human, alone, unarmed. Male, perhaps 40 years old, calm as an unlit fuse. "Who is this?" Greeks hissed. The human tilted his head. "You wanted proof of our presence. Congratulations. You found me. Name yourself." "No, but I'll give you something better." He held up a data crystal. "This has the kill schedule for your next 3 deployments. Full personnel rosters, supply chains, even the password your adjutant used to unlock this channel." Greeks' limbs tightened. "How did you—" "Don't worry, we're not going to use it. That's not the point." "What is the point?" "To see what you'll do with it." And with that, the human vanished, literally melted into the foliage, leaving only the distant echo of his last words. Reflection is more terrifying than violence. 30 clicks west, Mara and her squad moved like spirits through a grave of roots. The signal was close. She could feel it. A heartbeat that didn't belong. Duval's lens focused. There, the traitor was a Terran, a young woman named Fox, barely 20. She was crouched by a tree altar, feeding a protein stick to a Varl probe drone. Her eyes were wide, shaking. She wore no helmet. Her hair was matted with moss. "I didn't mean to," she began when they emerged. Mara said nothing. "Please, they promised they'd extract me. Take me off this rock. I didn't want to fight anymore." "You signed on," Mara said, her voice low. "You trained with us, bled with us." "I watched Alvarez die choking on his own blood and no one even screamed," Fox cried. "You call it discipline. I call it rot." Duval raised his rifle. "No," Mara said. "She doesn't die. She walks." "Walks where?" Mara looked toward the horizon where the Dominion towers pierced the canopy. "Into their camp." Duval hesitated. "You're giving her to them?" "No, she'll carry a message." Fox began to sob. "They'll kill me." "Not before they see what's inside you." Mara tapped her neural controller, initiating the transfer. A payload, subdermal, wrapped around Fox's spine. "We were never hunting soldiers," Mara said. "We were hunting algorithms." And Fox, knowingly or not, was now the most dangerous virus in the galaxy. General Uvex stood in the war chamber, his claws tapping a rhythm that had no melody. "They're not here to win," he murmured to himself. "They're here to change us." The Dominion wasn't afraid of death. But this battalion, this Whisper army, was not fighting a war of conquest. They were reprogramming the fear reflexes of the most powerful civilization in the quadrant. And they were succeeding. Across hundreds of command centers, generals were going silent. Security AIs were locking up in paradox loops. Troops were seeing shadows where none existed. Morale had dropped planet-wide. And then the bombshell came. A human soldier, barely conscious, was found crawling toward Dominion lines. Her name? Unimportant. But the message buried inside her neural cortex? It broadcast on all frequencies. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. You have two choices, the message said. Surrender your secrets, or surrender your certainty. The war is not fought with bullets, it's fought with mirrors. The file included video of Dominion commanders lying, murdering, collapsing into madness, all captured by invisible Terran operatives. Then came the worst part. The last image was of General Uvex himself. Speaking to a mirror, alone. The reflection smiled. But Uvex hadn't. They started losing their reflections on day 19. It began with Lieutenant Skrex of the Dominion 3rd Data Corps. She'd reported her bathroom mirror malfunctioning, claimed it didn't show her anymore. Maintenance logged the issue. Routine, probably sensor failure. But then her reflection started showing up late. Half a second off, always smiling when she wasn't. She walked into traffic the next morning, expression blank. She was the first. By day 22, over 200 similar incidents had been recorded across Dominion installations on Karavos 9, and every one of the afflicted had either interacted with a captured human or watched the message Fox had delivered. It wasn't a virus. It wasn't even technology. It was something far older, an idea. Mara Chin watched from the canopy as a Dominion cargo hauler exploded midair, raining shards of plasma-seared alloy across the forest. The fire didn't spread. Karavos 9 didn't burn conventionally. The trees simply absorbed the heat and turned it into song, high-pitched, dissonant melodies that vibrated the bones. Strike confirmed, Duval reported. Zero resistance, again. That's the 6th ambush without counterfire, Shing added, her voice laced with tension. They're not just confused anymore. They're paralyzed. Mara didn't reply. She was staring at her hand. It was shaking. Not with fear, with the absence of it. That was the thing no one prepared you for in Ghost Ops. Not how to survive the killing, but how to survive after. What's the current mental state of Battalion 01? She asked. Duval blinked. Ma'am? We've cut comms, supplies, leadership. We've infected their thought structures. I want to know what we've done to us. No one answered. Not because they didn't know, but because they did. There were no more campfires, no jokes, no songs. The battalion no longer asked when they would leave Karavos 9, because they knew. They wouldn't. Not in body, only in consequence. Dominion High Command evacuated the Karavos front lines on day 25. The evacuation order didn't include soldiers, just officers, analysts, strategists, the ones whose dreams had begun to replay, but backwards, the ones who found echoes in static, shapes in fog, messages in their own thoughts, the ones who understood the enemy had stopped killing bodies, and had started killing certainty. General Uvex remained behind, not because he wanted to, but because he refused to let the last vestiges of Dominion sanity abandon this cursed moon. He stood before the captured human agent Niels, now restrained in a confinement field so dense it bent light. Why did you come here? Uvex asked. Niels smiled. A real smile. Not defiance, not cruelty, something quieter. We didn't come. We were always here. Lies. No, Niels said softly. Reflections. You built your empires by projecting strength. You made every weakness invisible. Every failure deniable. And then one day, you stopped noticing the truth. We just held up a mirror. Uvex snapped. You've destroyed your own operatives, sacrificed them to break us. Is that your species' strategy? Madness? Not madness, Niels replied. Consequence. Every Terran you've encountered here knew exactly what they were doing. He nodded toward the walls of his cell where hidden data nodes pulsed faintly. Even now, they're reflecting. And in that moment, Uvex's memory fractured. A recursive loop of conversations he'd had weeks ago with no one. Documents he'd seen that now no longer existed. Commands he'd given to squads that had never returned. Except, had they ever existed? He turned back to Niels, but the human was gone. So was the chair. So was the room. He was alone. In a damp pocket of the eastern basin, Mara sat in meditation. The roots around her pulsed with fungal glow, throbbing like arteries. Her team had disbanded, not out of disobedience, but mission complete. The Dominion was still armed, still numerous, still dangerous, but no longer certain. And certainty was the first casualty of extinction. She tapped her neural sync and recorded one final message. To Earth Command, or whoever's left to hear this, the forest is quiet. We've succeeded. But if you send anyone else, tell them this place doesn't need liberation. It needs memory. And mirrors. She closed her eyes. A moment later, her body collapsed into spores. The final command protocol, Bloom Protocol 7. The Terran 9th Ghost Battalion had completed its final phase. They were now part of Karavos 9. Not soldiers anymore. Symptoms. Across the galaxy, Dominion systems began crashing under impossible logic feedback loops. AI fleets shut down, unable to reconcile stored data with reality. Field commanders received orders from voices that mimicked their own. Every major species in the Galactic Council convened for an emergency summit. And one phrase kept recurring. Reflection war. They didn't know what it meant, but they felt it. even without seeing. Meanwhile, back in a quiet room on Earth, a child stared into her mirror. Her mother called her name. The girl didn't answer, because her reflection did. 3 standard cycles after the fall of the Karavos 9 front, Dominion High Command initiated Operation Palingenesis, the Rebirth Protocol, not to strike back, but to understand what had happened. The mission was clear: recover any surviving biological data, retrieve 1 Terran body, living or dead, learn, adapt, reassert control. They sent 13 science vessels. Only 1 returned. Its crew were found in perfect health, still at their posts, eyes open, brains wiped clean, not damaged, erased, as if the idea of memory had been surgically removed. The lead ship's logs ended with a single word: reflection. That was the moment the war ended, not with surrender, not with negotiation, but with inconclusion. And the galaxy would never rest again. Beneath the fungal canopy of Karavos 9, spores still pulsed with bio-coded patterns. The trees had learned to whisper in human frequencies. Rivers carried electromagnetic pulses in Morse. Even the insects buzzed in fragments of Terran encryption. The 9th Ghost Battalion had not vanished. They had translated. Their consciousness, fractal distributed, layered into the neural web of the planet, was now a living feedback loop of strategy, memory, and mirrored observation. And then came the message, broadcast on every open channel in every tongue. We are not weapons. We are consequences. It was signed not by a fleet admiral, not by a president, but by a symbol. 2 hands mirrored, palms out, fingers touching. A human gesture, the sign of reflection. The message carried with it something else. Instructions. Coordinates to a world deep in forbidden space. Earth. They came in secret. A summit of the brightest tacticians, generals, and war strategists in the known galaxy. Not to wage war, but to understand one thing. How had Earth, an unremarkable blue sphere, produced a single battalion that cracked the logic of warfare itself? They arrived in cloaked ships and landed in shadow. What they found was nothing unusual. No weapon factories, no military ceremonies, just people, laughing, eating, arguing, living. They searched for signs of advanced tactical development. Found none. Until they reached a school. A human child, no more than 6, sat alone, staring into a hand mirror. The same gesture. Fingers to glass. A teacher approached. Maya, who are you talking to? The girl smiled, not looking away from her reflection, to someone far away. The teacher knelt. Is it a friend? The girl's voice was simple, honest, unafraid. No, it's the part of them they forgot. And for a brief moment, every visiting general saw their own reflection in the mirror. Not their face, their fear. In a hidden chamber deep within a classified Earth facility, Agent Orion stood before a panel of black-suited observers. His hands rested on a table made from Karavos wood grown from spores, harvested from silence. The operation was successful, Orion said. The battalion is no longer personnel. It is ideology. A pause. And the galaxy? Orion tilted his head. Still recovering. Another pause, then a question from the panel. And humanity? Now he smiled. Preparing. For what? For the next war. Who's the target? No one, Orion said, and that's the point. Years later, in a deep sky outpost on the edge of known space, a warning beacon flickered. A patrol had gone silent. A world was no longer responding. Scouts reported dense forests where there had been none. Trees with bark that shimmered in binary. Leaves that hummed with Terran lullabies. The local AI froze upon processing the pattern. A single file had injected itself into every system. No virus, no code. Just a video. It showed 30 Terran soldiers in full ghost armor, walking silently into the woods. Behind them, an entire army collapsed without contact. Below the video, a single phrase. Certainty is extinction. And now, somewhere, someone watching this must ask, what happens when the enemy teaches you to fear your own thoughts? What happens when your reflection begins whispering back? And more importantly, what will you do when the quiet war comes to your world? Leave a comment below. Let us know how you think your species would survive against the 9th Ghost Battalion. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel for more stories of Earth's unsung defenders, those who fight in shadows, those who echo through legends. And if this story shook you, if you felt that chill in your bones, drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if war was no longer about bullets, but belief? Because somewhere in the dark, someone is already listening, and they already know your name.